evening and welcome to another edition of Citizens Movement Radio News. Today is Thursday, the 29th of May, 2025. I'm Kate Chuma and ready to bring you the latest news and updates. Here are today's headlines on Citizens Movement Radio News. Mnangagwa criticized for threatening journalists during media policy launch. Gono warns of uprising as ZANU-PF faces criticism for excessive taxation. Trapa plus interchange set for official opening tomorrow amid criticism over cost. Now let's take a look at our stories in detail. ZANU-PF detector Emmerson Mnangagwa yesterday used the launch of the national media policy as an opportunity to threaten journalists who report negatively against his corrupt government. Mnangagwa said the media must be patriotic and report positively about his government, which critics says it's corruption. Opposition official and media practitioner Stephen Sarkozy Chuma said the government must create favorable working conditions for journalists so that they do their work without fear or favor. Chuma said,
Yes, yesterday we were very shocked to hear ZANU-PF dictator Emmerson Mnangagwa threatening journalists that they should report positively about the so-called Second Republic. But we all know that the Second Republic has soared on people's rights. We all know that the Second Republic has soared on the rights of journalists, so they deserve no respect from journalists. We know that the concern is very clear on Section 61 about freedom of expression and also the rights of journalists. But the regime of Emmerson Mnangagwa does not respect rights of journalists, as we have seen in the past, where a journalist, Blessed Mhlanga, spent 73 days in pre-trial detention for simply doing his duty. What is clear from Emmerson Mnangagwa's regime is that the national media policy, which he launched yesterday, is an attempt to threaten journalists, is an attempt to align journalists to report according to ZANU-PF principles, not according to media principles. So this is sudden.
ZANU-PF government have been accused of overtaxing citizens without offering much in terms of services and development. This was said by former Lopengula Makwekwe MP Honorable Gono, who slammed the government of Emmerson Mnangagwa for milking poor citizens without accountability for money acquired from taxes. He warned that too much taxation on citizens will eventually lead to mass anger against the regime. Let's get more details from him.
The ailing government of Zimbabwe is the most crazy government that anyone can ever think of. I don't know if there is any country in the world that has got so many taxes like we have in Zimbabwe, right from the 2% tax, the sugar tax, to all the other taxes, including the recently signed draconian ZPC license tax. It's very unfortunate that in a country where majority of citizens have got no source of living, there is no jobs, there is no industry, there is no employment, people do not earn salaries. The government of this country expects citizens to be paying as much as $100 for a service that they do not use. No one in this country listens to ZPC because it's a propaganda instrument of a regime that everyone hates. But people of Zimbabwe are being forced to pay so much. But remember, Ian Smith did this with the dog tax, with the heart tax, which was then later part of the center of his downfall. The people of Zimbabwe then took arms because they didn't want to pay those hard taxes, they didn't want to pay dog taxes and the like. So the regime of Harare must be very careful the way that they are siphoning the little that the citizens of Zimbabwe get is going to force them to react. People of Zimbabwe are not stupid. They are going to react to this, and I'm sure very well that the regime will not like the reaction that is going to come out of the people of Zimbabwe, because if you squeeze something too much, it's bound to react. And I think that the people of Zimbabwe are slowly getting there. They are slowly seeing that these people, if they are not stopped, they will want to suck our blood.
Trabablas Interchange, formerly known as Mbuzi Roundabout in Harare, is set for official opening tomorrow amid allegations of inflated costs linked to corrupt businessman Kudata Kwirei. Former Minister and current Bulawayo Mayor David Coulthard raised questions over $88 million cost of interchange. Posting on his social media platforms, Coulthard said the cost of production is too high compared to the cost of other better similar structures in other African countries. Meanwhile, journalist and former ZANU-PF member Jelas Mawarire has exposed why certain individuals are backing President Mnangagwa's 2030 agenda. Speaking in an interview, Mawarire says businessman Kudata Kwirei and his associates are draining the national treasury through corrupt schemes such as inflating the value of treasury bills and acquiring government-owned entities only to resell them back to government at a profit. He added that these actions are contributing to the government's failure to pay salaries and service national debt. Let's hear Mawarire explain in full how the grand theft is taking place.
The third term is really lucrative for these criminals. For instance, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and on behalf of these six, also runs a treasury bill scandal in the country, where people who were issued out with treasury bills in 2019, when we had a change of currency, when the Zimbabwe government could not pay these, some of them are business people, when they couldn't either provide the Zim dollar that these people had used to apply for money from the Reserve Bank, to apply for to get forex from the Reserve Bank. We had a situation where, because of the change of the currency, these people were then issued with treasury bills by the government of Zimbabwe. Some of the treasury bills mature in 2042, some in 2047. But now the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance has created a market for these treasury bills, where if you hold $100 million worth of treasury bills, they persuade you to discount them. Some of the discounts get even to 80%. So you had a $100 million treasury bill. It's discounted. You are paid 20 million cash on that day. But here is the corruption. The government of Zimbabwe does not only fork out 20 million, it pays the total value of the treasury bill as if it is matured. So 100 million is paid to you, but you have a separate arrangement with the lawyers of Guamatanga and the cabal, where you are supposed to pay 80 million to them. So the 100 million is transferred to you, but you only take 20 million because that's what's due to you. The 80 million goes to this cabal. And it has been going on since 2022. This sort of black market, this corrupt deal for treasury bills. So that's the situation. So you have, on one hand, state assets being looted. The Kuvimba mining house example is one. We have an entity where government purportedly sold the mining entity 50% of their share for $21.5 million in 2019. Then Taguirei and company then paid off the other Russian shareholder 38 million, a total of 60 million paid for that mine. Then they take some few other mines, add to that, form what is called Kuvimba Mining House, valued then at 220 million. That was the value, 220 million. So in 2023, when government wanted 975 million from Taguirei and company, working with the Minister of Finance, Mutuli Ncube, working with the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, revalued the same mine. The same mine that was valued at 220 million is now valued for 1.5 billion in 2023 for the purposes of offsetting a $975 million debt that Taguirei had with government of Zimbabwe. So they said 65% of the shares in Kuvimba Mining House is equivalent to 975 billion. They remain with 35%. This is 2023. Come 2024, the same mine is revalued. And now, using CBZ capital owned by Taguirei, the value rises from 1.5 billion to 5.4 billion. Then, after it has been revalued, they say, now we are selling our shares, 35%, for 1.9 billion. They get 1.9 billion. They go to CBZ, sorry, they go to CBZ, they sell, they discount their treasury bills because government paid them with treasury bills. They get 600 million. They do whatever they want with the 600 million. But now their company called the CBZ holds the $1.9 billion treasury bills with a 5% per annum interest. So now, through CBZ, they're getting 23 million per every quarter, which amounts to 100 million a year just from the interest rate accrued. So they are earning $100 million just from interest from the sale of 35% shares. This is before the treasury bills mature. Maybe in five years they will mature. But before that, they would have accrued $500 million just in interest. And this 100 million a year is paid and is given preference for payment to anything else. We have a situation where even civil servants are not paid. But the 23 million US dollars per quarter is given priority. It's paid because it's distributed among these thieves, who include even the president of the country. The president is held hostage because of his mental status. He has been held hostage. And those that are holding him hostage, including his family, are those that are seeking a third term for him. The Kudakwa Shetagwireis, the John Panonet Samangujira, the Guamatanga permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, the family of the president who are involved in this looting are the ones that are pushing for the third term. So the president has no say in this because he has no mental presence to understand what is happening around him. Decisions are being made at Prickhead Farm, at his farm in Kwekwe, more than 200 kilometers away from State House. That's where decisions are being made. And the fact that the president says officially that he doesn't seek, he's not seeking a third term, and everything else that is happening around him from his own ministers, the Minister of Local Government is a vehement campaigner for the third term. And his family and all these who are involved in looting national resources are pushing him. They are saying a different language. So it shows that the president is not in control. If he was, in the few moments that he regains consciousness, he talks about being a constitutionalist. But because he's held hostage by those that are really in control of executive powers and are exercising executive powers on his behalf, the surrogate presidents that have said, Kudakwa Shetagwireis, he is being railroaded to a third term. That's the unfortunate situation.
Yesterday, we ran a story on how the United Kingdom government removed 4 individuals and 1 entity under the Zimbabwe sanctions regime. Today, we spoke to opposition official Honorable Kobani Madzivanika on the matter and asked him if the ZANU-PF government can continue using excuse of sanctions to hide its failures. Let's hear more from him.
The recent delisting of Minister Owenqube, Minister Anzele Mzanyatwe, Isaac Moyo, and the former Commissioner General Godwin Matanga from the United Kingdom sanctions list is a clear testament or a correct indictment to what we've been saying all along, that Zimbabwe as a country is not under sanctions, but individuals are under sanctions for various crimes against humanity and the lack of respect for rule of law and the issue of violence and intimidation on political opponents. So you will find that of late, the government of Zimbabwe and all its officials have been blaming the sanctions for their failure to provide decent jobs or employment for the people of Zimbabwe. They have been blaming sanctions for failing to tame the general price increases, that is inflation. They've been blaming sanctions for failure to provide for a stable currency, local currency. They've been blaming sanctions for their failure to provide proper infrastructure, that is roads, rail, and water and sanitation. They failed dismally in every sphere of life, and ultimately they blame economic sanctions to say that Zimbabwe is under economic sanctions. But the recent delisting of the individuals is very clear that the sanctions are not on Zimbabwe, but the sanctions are targeted on individuals. So now that the individuals have been removed from the sanctions list, we want to see who else would they blame to say we are failing to do this for our people because of sanctions. We want to see who else would they blame. It is very important and fundamental that to understand that the sanction regime that was put on Zimbabwe was targeted particularly number one, on the issue to do the asset freeze. The idea was to say, if you steal money from Zimbabwe, you cannot go and invest that money in America. You cannot go and invest that money in the European Union. You cannot go and invest that money in the UK. That was the reason. So actually, it was intended to protect the people of Zimbabwe from these fraudsters. Secondly, it was a travel ban to say people who engage in violence and persecution of its own people, people who brutalize their political opponents, people who do not want to promote freedom of media, freedom of speech, and who basically do not respect human and property rights, should not set their foot in the United Kingdom, should not set their foot in the European Union countries, should not set their foot in the United States of America. And for that matter, therefore, we want to clearly express to the people of Zimbabwe, for them to understand that it was all lies to say that Zimbabwe as a country is under sanctions. It was actually an idea or a way of running away from the realities of life. The biggest problem in this country is corruption. We have seen how the country has been looted to the dogs. So it is very important for Zimbabweans to understand that it is not sanctions that is the cause of our problems in Zimbabwe. It is now clear by the removal of these targeted sanctions from these individuals who were mentioned to see that Zimbabwe as a country was not under any economic sanction that affect its prosperity, but it was under sanctions for individuals who violate other people's human rights.
Citizens Movement Radio also spoke to human rights activist Treasure Pasopo to give us his views on the recent lifting of sanctions on 4 individuals and the Zimbabwe defense industries. Let's hear his thoughts.
I obviously believe in the autonomy, in the self-determination and the sovereignty of states as defined by the Montevideo Convention of 1933 on the rights and duties of states. However, in this current era that we are living in, I strongly believe that for globalization or for the international legal mechanisms to have weight, there must be means and methods, there must be measures that can be adopted on autocratic countries or autocratic consolidation agenda. And the sanctions have obviously been used in history and in this current era is one of those methods. Discussing on the effectiveness and the fairness is a discussion for another day, but as it stands, one of the tools is sanctions. So in this case, in the case of the dictatorship in our country, we obviously have the what is being referred to locally as Rigananda, or which means the levers of political power, the levers of political oppression in the country, those who commit crime with impunity. And in this case, there's Owen Murangube, a well-known thug, a criminal, Anselm Sanyatwe, who was presiding over the killing of our people, who were democratically demonstrating within the confines of our national constitution in terms of the Bill of Rights, Kodun Matanga, Isaac Moyo, Zimbabwe Defense Industries, and then the Army Company. And I do not understand why these entities or these people have been removed from the list of sanctions, because in as far as we are concerned, the citizens of Zimbabwe, the criminals that they have committed or that they were committing, they have not yet answered to all these criminals. And the rationale behind removing these sanctions then becomes a very, 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 very difficult to understand. So I am of the strong opinion that those who have been sanctioned can only be removed as a matter of consensus, at least at a national level. With the ordinary citizens, with the civic society, with the media, people have to consult as to whether these comrades or these people qualify to be removed. Because in as far as we are concerned, the citizens of Zimbabwe, criminals like Owen Murangube, they are threatening people every day. They are killing people in Kwekwe and Gweru. And they have not answered to all these things. So I would have strongly advocated for the continuation of sanctions on these particular targeted individuals. Thank you very much.
Zimbabwe-China relations are once again the subject of discussion among citizens following a list released by the Asian nation of 47 countries exempted from its visa requirements. Zimbabwe, like all other African nations, is not part of the list. Political commentator Jefferson Chitando said, despite ZANU-PF boasting of China as an all-weather friend, the Chinese think otherwise. The 6 opposition leaders who were arrested at Dr. Morgan Tsvangirai House in 2020 were back in court today for trial, continuation and judgment. However, the 6 who are Senator Amai Vongai Tome, along with Honorable Gladys Hlatshwayo, Tendai Biti, Lynette Karenyi Kore, Lovemoch Noputsa, and David Chimini, will have to return to court on the 23rd of June 2025, where the matter will now proceed to the defense lawyers for their submissions. Residents of Chitungwiza have urged the government to address perennial water challenges facing the dormitory town. Some of the residents who spoke to Citizens Movement Radio said boreholes installed by Emmerson Mnangagwa under the presidential borehole schemes are no longer functional. Let's hear them speaking.
Isu sevagari vemuchitungwiza zvisina kutyanana kana kuvhundukisirana ndichingozvimiriro hangu inini dambudziko ratanaro izvezvi remvura ragarisa. Vana vedu chaivo havachatoziva kuti mvura inobuda kana patepi chaipo. Kudhara taitogeza shawa but ndofunga takutosvika 25 years ndindofunga ndakapedzera kutoiona ndine 38 years asi ndakapedzera kuona mvura ndofunga ndaiva grade 2 chaiyo kuti tigeze shawa. Takushandisa mvura dzakasviba, vanhu vari kuuya vachititengesera mvura yakabva kunaya. Izvezvi tisingafaniri kuwana dambudziko remvura nguva yakadai omwe. Takapromiswa isusu kunzi mvura ichapera, dambudziko remvura tikambonzi towards my elections abva aya 23 August aya tikanzi mvura ichapera, presidential scheme Mnangagwa achitaurawo zvavaitaura, tikafunga kuti dambudziko richapera. Asi 2 years dzichangotiperei after my elections vadzokera home office hapasina kana chimuko. Maboha akanga vaisa acho amwe haachashanda, amwe achari kupoliticizwa. Tirikunzi tinofanira kunge une kadhi reZANU-PF kuti unge uchiwana mvura, zvimwe zvacho hazvichatoshandi. Saka seraiti yedu isusu sevagari tirikunzi tinobhadhara futi mvura kukanzviri, mvura yacho haibudi, mari dzacho dzatoziva kuti dzinoshandei. Tinoswera tichitsvaga mari yechikafu, totsvaga mari yemvura yekutotenga mvura yakachena kuti ungokwanisa kuzobika. Ndava isusu sekwatinogara tinondochera murwizi chaimo nezvimatsime zvakasviba zvakakontaminetwa, mabhoho ari kungoitwa tinoti septic tank kuseri kuemba achibhora chimugodhi kufurandi. Saka titori mutime bomb chaiyo yekolera. Saka zvinhu izvozvi isusu tanzwa zvazvotinyanyira izvozvi. Chikumbiro chedu pada kuti pagadziriswe, hatizivi kuti panogadziriswa sei, kana yekuudza chaiyo hatina. Vanhu vacho vanongotipromisa towards my elections. After my elections vagara havo kudzimba dzavo nevana vavo, hapasina munhu.
Evicted residents of Cloverdale Farm in Ruwa, who are mostly ZANU-PF supporters, have vowed not to vote for ZANU-PF in the 2028 elections. The residents say the ZANU-PF-led government has let them down by allowing them to settle on the land before elections and evicting them after they voted for the party in 2023 elections. Let's hear one of the youths evicted from the land and his vow not to vote for ZANU-PF again.
Kuchema mwedu tichema kuti zvinhu zvedu hatirwadza zvaomarara. Munhu akafa uyu achinyanya kutirwadza kuti angani vana tuma twins vadiki vari kukambaira izvezvi. Akafa ende hatitoziva kuti akachemwa nehama dzake, anoti vanhu hapana ari kuziva nezvinhu zviri kuitika zvinonguva ino. Izvezvi hatitoziva kuti mukadzi wake ari kupi ende hamisi kuti akachemerwa kupi munhu wacho. Zvinotirwadza mbava. Ende futi kwakapfurwa vanhu 3 kuno. Izvezvi mumwe wacho akatosungwa ari kumasales izvezvi. Ane gumbo, akatyoka gumbo izvezvi hapana ari kumuona. Nekuti nyaya yekuti tiri kudzingwa uko akangobata ropa wasungwa. Ende vaitora vanhu vachisunga ende futi ende vangane izvezvi kune vamwe vanga mategas akakandwa mategas. Kune vane nhumbu nevana vari kumusana izvezvi, vamwe vana vari kurwara izvezvi. Hatizivi toita sei noti tiri panguva yakaoma. Kuna kugara vanhu kugara izvezvi vanhu vaitora mapurisa vaine mota vachikanda zvinhu zvavo kunoku ende vaisakanda zvinhu zvakanaka kuti vaise zvinhu zvakanaka vaiita zvekupotsera zvinhu zvakanaka vachitora izvezvi kuna mani vaichema mabhatiri avo vakato izvezvi vanhu vachibirwa mari dzavo izvezvi turwadziwa mndaa zvekuti inenika hapasi kundirwadzi nekuti zvasei vanhu vacho musangano vasiri kutoona unoti tagariri pamusangano kuti pamberi nezano pamberi but kuzoona kuti pamberi nezano hapana zvaikutishandira mndaa
saka use mukomana wechidiki manje wanga wakutarisa kunovhota muna 2028
ndichaita kuti pamberi nekuvhotera president Mnangagwa ende taida kuvhotera kuti vanga vatipo musho era se vakanaka kuti vanope kugara tatiaroje takuitiwo zvinhu zvedu sezvo vakomana taita kuti tani pamba takuitiwo zvinhu zvedu takutogadzirawo matanga ehuku mndana matanga ehuku takuti maproject akanaka mndana but izvezvi huku dzakafa hatisina kana chatinacho zviso pakaoma
saka takatarisa 2028 ione zvakaitika izvi uchanovhotera here ZANU-PF
handikudi kunyeba tichivhote nezvakaitika izvi tivhote tikurwadziwa asi kana vale pekuti iso pakanaka 2028 tinovhota asi musangano wakatirasisa ende isusu tichatori mayuthi yacho isusu tichatori mayuthi dai tomiramira munomu mayuthi weti dai tichitoitawo chitonzima vamwe vatakapuwa mayuthi tatogoma masitendi edu ende pakatanga kusvika zvinhu tasingarari mumba tarara pabhumgeta tichichengetedza musha but musha wacho wakazosvika pakuparara.
Renowned Kenyan author and icon of African literature, Professor Ngugi wa Thiong'o is no more. He passed away yesterday, aged 87. Ngugi was renowned for his novels like Weep Not, Child, The River Between, and I Will Marry When I Want. His literary works touched on various issues, including the effects of colonization on Africans. May his soul rest in peace. Let's take a look at our sports news. Chelsea are the 2025 champions of the UEFA Conference League after thumping Spanish side Real Betis 4-1 last night in Poland. The Blues put up a splendid second-half display after going one down in the first half from a goal by Betis Moroccan winger Abdi Ezalzouli. Goals by Enzo Fernandez, Nicolas Jackson, Jadon Sancho and Moises Caicedo completed comeback for Chelsea. To conclude our Citizens Movement radio news, here are the headlines once again. Mnangagwa criticized for threatening journalists during media policy launch. Gono warns of uprising as ZANU-PF faces criticism for excessive taxation. Trapa Plus interchange set for official opening tomorrow amid criticism over cost. This is the end of our bulletin. Good night.